All right, glad you made it back, everybody. Over the weekend, the Boise, Idaho Pride Festival featured grooming as its main event. The, quote, drag kids on stage show targeted children and was sponsored by multiple major corporations like Target, Wells Fargo, Hewlett-Packard, and Citibank. After serious backlash, Boise Pride claimed to cancel the performance, but in footage released by the Idaho Tribune, young children were brought on that stage anyway. Joining me now is Daily Caller reporter and Newsmax contributor Chrissy Clark, president of Colorists United, also host of an Inconvenient Minority podcast and author of An Inconvenient Minority, Kenny Zhu. Kenny, if they were sponsoring performances for, female strippers for kids or scantily clad females for kids, it would be considered child abuse. If these businesses are engaging in this morally bankrupt activity, what should Americans who care about the well-being of children, what should Americans be doing in response?
Well, the first thing you need to know about these drag queen story hours is that you're basically lowering the standard for what is appropriate behavior in society. Just like you said, people can use the LGBTQ justification to say, well, this means we're allowed to give certain sexual preferences to kids and everything like that. And that's just wrong. You're not allowed to lower the standards of society just to accommodate a certain agenda, whether it's race or sex or any other thing. In terms of what ordinary Americans can do, they can speak out to their local school board. They can speak out to the local public library. We've seen this tactic work in terms of local Americans getting together, talking to the town mayor. In North Carolina, something like this happened, and public officials were disgusted, as well as ordinary parents, and those tactics definitely work.
Well, yeah, and these were corporations, major corporations, sponsoring this. And you know what? If people are starting to get upset about this, maybe they can let their wallets do the walking. Chrissy, a bar in Denton, Texas, planned a Cool Beans Drag Brunch, Disney edition, on September the 11th. On September the 11th. Thanks to conservative host Sarah Gonzalez, the event was shut down. She said, quote, "We as a society have failed if we stand by and watch mentally ill parents expose their children to these shows and think it's none of our business. Child abuse is everyone's business." Do you think she's onto something?
Absolutely. We're looking at Indiana University, where they're erecting statues to individuals who believe that pedophilia is not a crime. I mean, this is something that's being martyred in our society right now for some reason in the name of LGBT identities. And unfortunately, that puts a bad name for LGBT identifying people, many of whom don't believe that pedophilia is okay. Or I would venture to say 98, 99% of most of them who wouldn't think that this is okay. Now listen, drag brunches, am I gonna sit here and rail that drag brunches need to be gotten rid of altogether? Absolutely not. But there's no place for children to be at these events. I don't care what your style of parenting is. Children should not be allowed to have access to this art form, or whatever you'd like to call it. This has no place in our society. Sarah nailed it on the head when she said that this is literally the decay of society. But simultaneously, I mean, why are we not questioning these parents? Like, I mean, you leave your kid in a car for a little while and you could have them taken away from you. Why are we not putting in some sort of stringent guidelines for what to do when children are exposed to this stuff?
Well, it's a fair question. And I think a lot of these child protective services that overreact in many cases seem to be underreacting in this case. Kenny, no one fails up like a liberal. Ex-CNN host Brian Stelter has a brand new gig at Harvard University where he will teach about threats to democracy. Oh, the irony there. The average Harvard tuition is upwards of 55 grand or so, and they're being taught by a guy who was too extreme for CNN. But you're suing Harvard for discrimination against Asians, so this seems like, well, they're skilled over there at Harvard at making bad decisions.
Yeah, as is typical with liberals love taxing the successful, and they love protecting their failures. As we know, Brian Stelter was a failure, even out of CNN. And of course, now he gets a prestigious fellowship with with one of the most leftist, most prestigious universities in the country, Harvard University. And the reason why we're suing Harvard University, if you look at my book, An Inconvenient Minority, is because of their decline in competence. You know, we used to believe that Harvard University accepted the best and brightest, the most competent people, but now we see they're discriminating against the best and brightest, most competent people just because they happen to be Asian American. In fact, Asians have to score over 270 points higher in the SAT just to have the same chance of admission as a black person. So Harvard is placing woke identity politics and rewarding failures like Brian Stelter over people who genuinely deserve to get the resources and attention of a prestigious university.
Well, Chrissy, and then there's Circle Back Psaki, who has a new job. She hinted at what we can expect from her new gig at MSNBS. Watch. Oh, there it is. What I hope to do is bring that passion for explaining things, debunking things, calling out BS when you see it. Okay, it's a Salcedo Show axiom. Leftists project qualities onto others that they themselves have in abundance. Isn't that what Miss Psaki's doing here?
I can't believe she has to know that this is so wrong, right? And also, can we just say if MSNBC doesn't name her show Circle Back, they're ultimately failing their viewers. Like, that needs to be the name of her show. I don't understand. I think it's one of the biggest problems within liberal circles, and especially elite liberal circles. Poke fun at yourself. Have a little fun, okay? Your show would be so much better if she would poke fun at herself, be honest about her tenure under the Biden administration. Move on from it. I don't understand why she's trying to go and say that her entire tenure of dodging questions was somehow about shining light and bringing truth. Come on, Jen, you're better than this.
I know, right? I like the way you put that. Her entire time in the Biden White House was dodging questions and obfuscating and not telling the truth. And now she's going to claim she's going to shine the light on truth. It's absolutely absurd. Thank you, Chrissy Clark. Thank you, Kenny Xu. Appreciate the visit. Folks, we got some breaking news rolling in right now here on the Chris Salcedo Show. Ken Starr has died at the age of 76. He's a former Solicitor General, Whitewater investigator during the Clinton years. That's where you know the name. Ken Starr has passed away, age 76. When we get back, Americans' right to work without being unionized is at stake during November's midterms, especially if Democrats keep the majority and the filibuster is removed.